Good morning, everyone. So as Louise says, I am one of the directors at WilsonCooke. We're a brand performance agency and one of the partners that has put the Rise group together. So I want to just apologise for having to move this to an online event this morning, and just thank everybody that's attended. 2022, I think, has brought some really big challenges from a number of perspectives, but very much as we've come out of this COVID world, what we're seeing is a real shift from in-person events and in-person meetings to virtual. And I just want to paint a picture of where the landscape is at and what challenges B2B businesses are facing. I'm not going to touch on B2C. We are a B2B and B2C agency, but today I really want to focus around B2B because I think the B2C environment is radically changing as well. I think that's a whole different topic. So a recent McKinsey survey of 3,600 B2B key decision makers found that 91% of people expect the remote and digital companies that have had to embrace over the last near on 2 years is not going away. It is very much here to stay. And what that means is that we are now in a full flexible working model. And all businesses have had to adopt some sort of hybrid working, which is working from home, working in the office, and it's very much the new norm. In terms of the new norm, we are still very much in a state of flux, with employers being seen to really reduce the working at home down to 1 day a week, and employees wanting to spend half the week at home. Interestingly, 85% of women want the flexibility to work at home, and around 79% of men prefer to actually be in the office. So women prefer working at home, men prefer to be in the office, and that presents some real challenges. One of the concerns that came out of this recent report is with a potential shift in gender preferences, is the danger of the office very much becoming the man cave as the office becomes dominated by men, and women opting to prefer to stay in and work at home. What that means from a marketing perspective, and the challenges that brings from a marketing perspective, is how and where do we reach our customers? Where are they? Marketing to them has now become a real challenge, because it's not just around being in the office and being at home. It's around very different changes in people's working day, people's working hour, and a real view that actually we have 7 days a week. Do hours of work need to be 9 to 5 anymore? So the whole working environment is changing, and this presents a huge challenge for marketeers. What this report identified, and the challenges faced by sales and marketing teams, are cancellations, a huge increase in cancellation of in-person events, up to 73%. And today's a good example of that. Fewer sales opportunities being generated. 46% said this. 21% said fewer leads being generated from marketing. 18% a loss of existing customers. 14% saying marketing leads not converting well. 14% saying that they've reduced headcount and hiring plans. So there are some real challenges out there from both the sales and marketing perspective when businesses are trying to reach customers and trying to get back some sort of normality. The reliance on in-person events has posed a significant issue. As I said, with 73% saying that in-person events are being cancelled, 46% fewer sales opportunities, And virtual and hybrid events are increasingly paying dividends in their ability to reach buyers across the world, and at a local level. And what that means, and I'll come on to some of how we address these challenges, is what do marketeers now do to actually start to market and reach customers that are in very different environments, that aren't in the office, and that may not be able to be contacted via a landline. And are the sales opportunities that are being generated, have they dropped? And whilst 46% said there were fewer opportunities, actually what we're seeing is a real shift in buying patterns, a real shift in the sales journey. So actually what potentially has looked like a drop in sales opportunity is just a seismic shift in buyer behavior and the sales cycle. Another key area is as marketeers have started to address this, is the reallocation of budget. So, I mean, pretty much all of you who carried on through COVID and post-COVID, and every client that we've worked with have seen a huge shift from what were already large digital budgets to even bigger digital budgets, as budgets are shift from what we call physical to digital, with marketeers well aware of the change of the business environment. But the key item to kind of be aware of is that shift in buyer behavior. Buyers are consuming far more content, and the demand for B2B content has risen by nearly 50% year on year. Now, what we don't know with this increase in content consumption, digital content consumption, is that because the touch points have now increased. And certainly when I talk about a change in sales behavior, we are seeing dramatic shifts in customer touch points. So research stage, those involved in the research stage, content consumption through to the I'm ready to purchase stage, has dramatically changed. And whilst there's a definite increase in content consumption, some of that could be linked to an increase in touch points in the sales journey. And we'll typically see this in the data that we're seeing, as content consumption has increased on websites, but also channel consumption, the content consumption through channels has increased, multiple website visits, social channel visits from LinkedIn, people attending webinars, and then the customers moving into calls, into calling companies to make contact. Webinar consumption has risen by near on 300%, and that's no surprise. So the one thing I would say to everyone today is, do you understand your customer journeys and touch points based on where we're at today? And are you factoring that in your marketing plans, and in your sales and marketing plans to reach your customer base and influence that decision-making process? What this does present from a marketing perspective is a huge opportunity to support the sales process this year and beyond this year, and really look at the hybrid environment and how we shift to virtual selling. Another study by the Rain Group found that 7 out of 10 salespeople people are reporting that they're now doing at least half of their sales virtually, which is phenomenal. And that near shift to digital, in nearly all digital interactions with some businesses, means that organizations have got to continue to drive and look at how they can reach customers in the digital environment, but align the sales and marketing function so that they don't lose ground to competitors who are potentially stronger in the digital arena. And that you might say, well, that's easier said than done, which which potentially it is. But I'm going to touch on some of those areas and how we can address them. So from a marketing perspective, one of the things I would always say is keep it simple, keep it very structured, and keep it very focused. Now is not the time for scattergun marketing. So actually understanding the landscape, understanding where your customers are at, and putting together an effective sales and marketing plan to reach those customers is critical. But less is more. Very focused, very structured, and a clear emphasis on customer experience. I'm going to touch on customer experience shortly. But do you understand as businesses how your customers want to be engaged with? Do you know where they're at from a meet versus virtual perspective? Do you know how and what content they want to consume? And that can start to then form the basis of both your sales and marketing strategy. One of the key things I would always say is manage the expectations between sales and marketing. Ask yourself how aligned your sales and marketing functions are, and who has ownership in each different area, and how this aligns with the way interactions have changed. From a marketing perspective, I see marketing very much responsible for brand awareness and lead generation. So whether you're B2B or B2C, it could be lead gen or it could be sales. From a sales perspective, they are then involved in nurturing leads and converting. The conversion process is very much a sales function, but it doesn't just stop there. It's not just about new customer acquisition. It's about existing customers and effective marketing to them. So from an after sales perspective, that account management and key account management is absolutely critical. And measurable, realistic KPIs. KPIs at this stage are really important because it keeps both sales and marketing focused on the core objectives of what you're trying to achieve. So in order to scale digitally and capture what is very much an evident increase in digital interactions, and what I see as a very much digital first future. What do businesses and what does the marketing team need to do to meet this model? One of the clear things that is coming out of this, and again driven from the McKinsey report, is changing our communication style and messaging. As content is being consumed at such a level, that change in communication, how customers are communicated to and what you're saying to them is absolutely critical. What you're using in terms of technology to implement change, the reallocation of budget from physical to digital, the change of roles and responsibilities. We're all probably experiencing, either to a greater or lesser extent, the issue of recruitment in the market at the moment, and particularly in marketing. And I think this is down to a huge change in roles and responsibilities within organizations as companies adjust to meet the change in market needs and the change in their customer requirements. Adjustable KPIs and targets, and I've already mentioned this, and I'll come on to this at a later stage on why that's important. So with all this change, what do we focus on? Where do we focus our approach? I think from a clear focus area, it has to be customer experience. What we know as marketeers is from a brand perspective and brand awareness, that customer experience is critical. And in my view, over the next few years will be the absolute game changer. So again, as an organization, not just the marketing function, but the whole operation should be focused on what is your customer experience and how do you provide the best customer experience, because that's where the battle is won or lost. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples. that are personal to me. So coffee and banks. I'm going to start with coffee. I absolutely love coffee. I drink not a huge amount, but a fair amount of coffee. And on a day-to-day basis, I will buy coffee from somewhere. So my criteria as a I want a coffee while I'm out and about, or and this is while I'm out and about, is that it has to be hot. It can't be too strong. I've got to be able to get it fast, hassle-free. It needs to be good value. And that's my day-to-day requirements for an everyday coffee. So my choice for my everyday coffee is McDonald's. I absolutely love McDonald's. And from a customer experience perspective, they tick all the boxes. Don't have to get out of the car. I can drive straight through. The actual experience of driving from the order to picking my coffee up at the end, which is usually where their hand is out the window and I just grab it, I think is outstanding. And it's my preference above all other providers. And they have provided me with an excellent customer experience. I would recommend them. I love their coffee. The price is great. It's half the price of Starbucks, and I do like Starbucks coffee. But Starbucks is slow. You know, if I'm out and about, I want fast, I want efficient, I want hot. But if it's not an everyday coffee, and if I'm out with friends, my needs and expectations change. I'm not bothered what I pay for that coffee. And actually, my criteria, which the first one I said was that it's hot, actually moves down the scale. And I live near Staley Bridge, and like I say, if I want a coffee where I'm out and about with friends, the criteria of hot coffee drops. And there's a place that I love to go to. It provides a great experience. It's a really good environment, and it then goes down to the customer experience that they provide as an environment, which is completely different. And that's why customer experience is so important. The second element, and this is something I think most people will be able to relate to, is banks. So when I have the unfortunate task of having to ring my bank for whatever reason, I absolutely dread it. So that the first thing, I'm filled with dread. I pick up the phone and I start to dial, and the first thing is voice activation. And tell me in a few short words what you want today. So I say what I'm after. Sorry, we didn't quite catch that. Say it again. I say it again. And then I get shifted usually to actually pressing the numbers. So then I'm given 5 or 6 numerical options. By the time I get to the end, I've forgotten what they are and have to listen to them again. And then usually, because I'm starting to get agitated at this point, I press the wrong button. And then I've learned that I can start to bypass the system by randomly and frantically pressing any button. And if I press any button, then it says, you appear to be having an issue. And I get through to a customer service person. This is usually taken about 10 minutes. So by this point, my irritation levels are fairly high. And then I get presented with, good morning, Mrs. Whitingham. I'm not Mrs. Whitingham, I'm Mrs. Whittingham. And I've banked with you for near on 20 years and you still can't get my name right. And then you're speaking to somebody who's talking off script. And for me, this is banks who have prided themselves on being at the forefront of technology and customer service. When you actually look at this model, it's horrific. I wouldn't recommend my bank to anyone, but I actually wouldn't recommend any bank to anyone because most of them give you this level of experience. As marketeers, I would question the data that's collected by organizations to provide a great customer experience. At no point has anybody, and this doesn't just apply to banks, it applies to Sky, it applies to British Gas. most large providers that you contact have this, what I would call, faceless, experienceless, completely lack of personalized experience. And with what I would assume fairly advanced marketing department, nobody's asked, let's ask our customer what they would like to be called. Rather than getting my name wrong, just call me Nicole. That's really simple. But for some reason, this level of engagement doesn't happen. And whilst technology, and I know, that these phone systems and were brought in to provide, as the idea generation session was happening all those years ago, how do we provide greater experience and what can technology to do that? And these clever systems were developed to provide a great experience and operational efficiency, because often these phone systems will come with highly advanced systems that give the business data, how quickly the phone was answered, how long people have been on calls for. So this drive for operational efficiency, I think, has come at the expense of customer experience. This whole self-service model, which is what banks predominantly introduced, whilst being a good model, have lost that level, I think, of customer engagement and personalization. And one of the things I would question in the whole arena of customer experience is, with the technology that exists, why can't you have a real person answering that phone and with it, knowing my ID, because the bank will know the number 9 out of 10 times that I'm ringing from, and pick up the phone and say, "Good morning, Nicole, how can I help you today?" That is not out of the realms of possibility in terms of where we are at now from a technological perspective. But no, brands keep operating at this, I think, this cold level where I'd question, are they really engaged with their customer? They don't know me. And that's the question that I would ask you. Do you know your customers? Know your customers. And when you're starting to look at the experience that you provide your customers, really look at it from a personalized perspective. What information can you gather about your customers that will make their experience better? And I think it starts with, what do you like to be called? Because actually, on a day-to-day basis, the salutation of Mr. and Mrs. has been lost. Most people address each other by their first name. So gone are the days of being addressed as Mrs. Whittingham. But if you want to be called that, then have that in some sort of data collection. And you can't underestimate the power of customer experience, because the two examples I've given you are very different. One is a coffee example, and the other is a day-to-day example that applies to a number of things, not just banking. But what that great experience does, it drives repeat business. And that is one of the best forms of marketing, word of mouth referrals, and the impact of that and the cost of acquisition for that is much less than other forms of marketing. So when you engage or capturing customers, think about what that means from a lifetime value perspective versus the cost of acquisition. In our marketing models, we've got to look at the cost of acquisition and the lifetime value of that customer and keeping that customer. And how do you do that? Brand recall is very much driven by customer experience. If I've had a great experience, whatever that might be, and usually it's because the organization has just gone a little bit above and beyond by providing a personalized experience with a good level of communication. I'm going to come on to communication in a moment, but that will help with brand recall, so that if I'm looking for that same service again, I'll remember the person that looked after me and provided me with a great service based on the needs I had at that moment in time. And that's the important factor. When I go onto my McDonald's coffee, it's the needs that I have at that moment in time. Because at another point in time, if it's a social with friends, my needs change very different. My needs are very different and they change. What this means, again, as marketeers, is that changes in customer priorities should lead to changes in strategy. And now is the time to be bold, and not to hang on to the past and say or think we've always done it like this. And if you are in a conservative industry, and we have lots of different clients, within our client base, we have lots of manufacturing clients, and manufacturing clients tend to be very conservative. It's one of the nuances of manufacturing. But what I would say is now is the time to be innovative and really to reach beyond your comfort zones, of what that means in terms of reaching out, servicing, and looking after customers. Looking after customers does extend to key accounts as well. And once you have won a customer or you have your base of existing customers, you have got to love and nurture those customers. Key account management is absolutely critical, for a number of reasons. As your customers grow, you will hopefully grow, and that word of mouth again becomes critical. So whilst you may be putting key account plans together or talking about campaigns and execution of campaigns, for your key accounts, one of the key things I would say, and certainly something that's come out through COVID, is around talking to people. Whilst digital interactions are important, what is still critically important is verbal communication. Asking customers how are they, showing real understanding and empathy for where they're at, and building real relationships. I always say to our team, just quit sending so many emails. And I'm guilty of this, but we have become a nation of emailers, and it's so easy to send an email out. But actually picking up the phone and speaking to your customers, how are you, understanding where they're at in a genuine empathy, I can't get that word out, with empathy, is huge. And I can't stress the importance of that in building relationships. And what this does mean from a workflow perspective is look at how your customer flow and your processes operate, and you can become less reactive to issues if you are more reactive with your key account management in terms of dialogue, talking, and that relationship management, and really saying, rather than sending an email, what can we do to talk to our customers? The rescoring of leads is again very important, and I don't like to use the word leads, but it's a term that we're all familiar with. But actually, how leads are scored again is very important. With the increase of digital interactions and content consumption being so high, it's now more important than ever to actually reassess how leads are scored, and particularly if you have a content management system. So where you might have classed a lead as cold, actually, if you reassess and I'm going to take the digital environment, but even then, when a call comes through to you, where are they at in their journey? Actually, in a digital environment, whether it's on a social channel or your website, what might have been classed as a soft goal and a soft conversion and a cold lead, which could be downloading a white paper or a case study, could actually be far warmer than you think, because of the change in buyer behavior and the way the sales process is changing for many organizations. So what I would say, and the relevance of this is then how the sales team then pick up and nurture and drive leads that are coming into the business. So again, going back to a soft goal, which might be, reading a white paper, rather than, in your process, it might be, well, nobody would contact that individual. Well, I think that needs to be reconsidered, and that will drive the sales funnel. So where we have McKinsey saying that leads have dropped by X%, well, actually, it goes back to, is it just because the buyer behavior is changing? Understand, and it goes back to understanding then where people are at in the sales journey, and because of those multiple interactions, what that means is potentially we've got a lot more people in the sales funnel than we actually realize. So again, from a marketing perspective, marketing functions to drive leads, but the rescoring of leads will actually then increase the number of people that the sales team have to talk to. So really, who is in the research phase? When are they ready to talk to someone in your team, and when are they ready to buy? And marketing should reassess their KPIs based on that. So looking at different touch points and your customer touch points, 82% of all online traffic is consuming large amount of content, and of that content consumption, 84% of users say they're more likely to invest in a product and service having watched a video. Anybody who works with us will vouch for the fact that I always talk about video, and I have done for at least the last 2 years. And video is becoming more critical. It doesn't have to be high quality production. It can be everyday video, snippets of video, which many of us are used to now from using different social channels. But the huge value in video is that it can be customized and it can be used across many different platforms. So creating one piece of great content that can be used across multiple channels will give you multiple exposure. Highlighting areas of value to your customers around your products and services, what that means for your customer, not just promoting the benefits, actually what it really means, and how you can add value and support your customers. Impactful case studies, again, talking to your customers with the right messages are critical, and using content and video content, you can test which content has more impact versus other content. And what I would say as a guidance is often some organizations will spend lots of time talking about themselves and what they can do for their customers. Don't do that. Talk about the value and help that you can give your customers. Whatever you do, what does that mean for your customers? How can you make life easier? How can you solve their problems? Understand and demonstrate that you understand their issues, and talk around them, because that will allow those customers that are consuming content to be more engaged. But test it. And this is where I go back, which I've just said, a common mistake that B2B businesses make is putting content out there where they're marketing themselves, and you're making yourselves the focus of that content. Flip the way you create content. Flip the way the messages that you're sending out there. Keep it customer focused. And that's the great thing about digital. It can be personalized. You can create different routes for different customer types and create different elements of content for those customers. So, and it goes back to that experience where I was called Mrs. Vitingham. It's not personalized. It's so off the mark. But actually using digital, using data, understanding your customers, allows you to create content that's relevant and personal to them. And it goes back to considering that experience. A question I would ask is do you, given where we're at now, when did you last speak to your customers? When did you ask them where they're at? How are they? What is their sales process? What does their sales journey look like? How are they consuming content at different points in their journey? Really get under their skin to see what has changed with them, so that you can adapt and weight content at different touch points in the process, whether it's qualification, whether it's helping drive that sale through, and tailor messages appropriately. When this then, again, from a marketing perspective, what this means is around building more infrastructure in terms of customer touch points. And when I say building more infrastructure, and I'll use website as a really good example. We've all probably got websites that have a contact form, and in the footer or header there is a phone number. Well, actually review that whole journey. Do not just have one contact method in your call to actions on your site. Have two, have three, and they should be tailored and scattered throughout the content in the journey that customer is following through the website. Don't just have a phone number at the top or the bottom. Actually, when if you've given a customer a piece of content in a section of the website, give them the option: call us now, video chat, we're here and now if you are, so that they can opt to select video chat right now, or I want to send an email, or I want to fill in a form. So look at multiple contact methods and test those methods within the content journey. That doesn't just apply to websites. That could be in your social channels as well. And that could also then be in presentations. One of the things that when we're looking at being innovative is instant quotes and the interception of customers. So most businesses that I work with will say, well, we're our sell is a value add, and we do not want to be providing instant quotes online. Instant quotes removes someone in the sales process having access to that customer. It's giving critical data away, and they might get a quote and then have had a cheaper one, and it devalues us because it's price driven. Don't think of it like that. Think of where your customers are at in their journey, and if they're working at 8 o'clock at night, and they might want an instant quote, or actually it might not be 8 o'clock at night, it might just be during the day. They want an instant quote. You don't have to give the quote away. It can be under the guise of, I'm taking you down an instant quote process. And at some point in that journey, if it's in normal business hours, you intercept that and either bring in a live chat. I'm actually here, can we have a quick chat? Or bring in a video chat, so that you're trying to lead your customer into a quote journey, but actually you intercept that before you give anything away. If they take that instant quote route, you know where they're at in the buying cycle. That's the first key point. But actually, you don't have to give that data away, and you don't have to say, I'm going to give you it online now. You can take them into a process that starts the acquisition of data to drive that quotation, but then moves them quickly either into a call, into a video chat. And that's about being bold and brave and innovative, and being interactive in digital interceptions, as opposed to just waiting for your customers to send an email or fill a contact form. I'd actually love to ban the contact form. And if we had a rule, all contact forms are banned, you can't use them, what else do we use, and how else do we engage with customers? But we don't have to rely on emails and contact forms. We can be bold, and the technology is there to intercept in our customer journeys, to drive people. We're here now, talk to us, don't just do it online. This then moves us into CRM, and CRM is important, and certainly flips back to that acquisition of customer data, and goes back to my point around knowing your customers, and actually changing some of your marketing questions to more relevant questions. You know, when we call you, if we phone you, what do you want to be called? How do you want to be addressed? And collecting more meaningful data to drive better experiences, because that data will drive brand awareness, recall. So CRMs are really important. But what I would say is assess the data that you're collecting in relation to your customers. So in terms of key considerations and what happens next, what I would say is that if you haven't already done this, do an audit and reassess where you're at. Customers are in very different environments now. It's not so easy to just reach your customer in that office environment. We have working from home, we have hybrid working environments, but we also have radical changes in working days and working hours, and therefore audit and reassess. Do you understand where your customers are and what they want, and where you're positioned in the marketplace? Talk to your customers and ask them. If you lose, and I always think this is really valuable. I always say, if you lose a customer, or if you lose a sale, so you're in a pitch process, or you provided a quote and you don't win, go back and ask that customer why you didn't get it. I had one business say, I was aware that the MD had said, why are we bothering doing that? We've lost the sale, so what does it matter? It matters enormously. It matters because you should understand why you didn't win that piece of work, why the order didn't convert. In order to get your conversion up, you've got to understand where you're losing out. And 9 out of 10 times, it won't be about price. And often I will see, you know, in lost customer reports, price. It's very rarely about price. Reassess your customer journeys, understand the decision-making process, understand the touch points, remap touch points based on people at home, people in the office, facilitate those journeys, and think innovatively in terms of new processes and new solutions. It shouldn't go back to business as usual. How do we adapt? How do we bring in an instant quote process in a digital environment without giving critical data away? But at the minute that customer clicks on instant quote, they're in the buying journey. How can video be used? How can customers be intercepted on your website? If they're on your website, don't just let them dawdle around and hopefully fill in a form or call you. Intercept them. Look at multiple and intelligent contact points based on different scenarios. Use virtual meeting platforms, use virtual event platforms, trial virtual events, trial virtual meetings. And most people, everybody's having virtual meetings, but certainly virtual events. There's lots of virtual event platforms coming out. Trial them, see how they work, run forums, run workshops, and give customers the choice of virtual versus in person. Nurture your strategic accounts, absolutely critical in looking after them. We all hear the word digital transformation, and digital transformation will become generationless. It's a term that just applies to all of us and that we all understand. as brands continue on that digital transformation journey. But what I would say is, remember that every interaction counts. So build a memorable experience. Make the if it's content, make it engaging, make it memorable, make it personalized. Do not neglect the human interaction. Data's shown that since the pandemic, direct calls have increased, have gone up from 40% to 60%, a preference of 60% preferring human to human interaction. And whilst things like chatbots have aided interaction and provided levels of efficiency and instant answers, in your customer journey, look at where the real customer experience resides, and do not neglect that human to human conversation. And technology can enhance that. And it goes back to, where we're all used to using email. Just because it's digital, it doesn't mean that we can't bring in the human interaction. And that will allow a better experience. And that, I go back to, is where the game is won or lost. Customers, and this is again something that marketeers have to be very, very aware of, that whilst we're focused on customer acquisition and customer retention, actually focus on the key topic of customers for life. And how do you build a customer for life model? What does that look like? Because if you build a customer for life model, that means you're really looking and understanding that customer experience, and whether that means in-person, virtual meeting events, virtual platforms, it doesn't matter. Provide as many avenues as possible, but keep it personalized, and look at the journeys and where you can intercept in those journeys. And I think that really covers everything that I wanted to say today. So I hope that's been useful. And